We'll start fresh from the beginning of the Homeric hymn to Demeter, but written only in the esoteric style, poetic, initiatory, and luminous. Each section will unfold like an inner mystery text, and I'll keep the degree mapping underneath, so you can trace the ascent from darkness to return. The Homeric hymn to Demeter. Esoteric translation and degree mapping. Section 1, The Descent of Persephone, lines 1 to 30, degree 10, reflection matter. Sing, O voice within, of the bright mother and her hidden child, of the soul that wanders from the light it loves. The daughter of heaven walked among the flowers of becoming, gathering the colours of form, weaving delight upon delight, for beauty was the mirror in which she saw herself. Then the ground opened like a breath withheld, and the Lord of depth arose, crowned in unseen fire. He took her not in wrath, but in the law that even radiance must enter shadow to know itself entire. The soul cried to the heights, but the heights were silent, for silence is the answer of the eternal to all who descend. Only the boundary ones heard her, Hecate, keeper of thresholds, and Helios, the eye that watches from beyond. Thus began the sacred exile, light remembering itself within matter, beauty veiled that beauty might be born again. We now follow the mother of light, Demeter, as she searches for the soul that has vanished into shadow. This section marks the awakening of divine memory, the 9th degree, when loss becomes the first step toward illumination. The Homeric hymn to Demeter, esoteric translation and degree mapping. Section 2, Demeter's search, degree 9, memory flame. The cry of the soul trembled through all the worlds, and wisdom heard the echo of her own heart. She rose from the stillness of eternity, her hair veiled in mourning, her hands bearing twin torches. No ambrosia, no nectar, no joy of the divine would she taste, for what delight is there to mind when its image is lost? Through 9 circles she wandered, each one darker and nearer to the human realm, her torches burning with the fire of remembrance. Everywhere she asked, "Where has my child gone?" But the heavens were mute, and the seas gave back only her reflection. At last, upon the shadowed road, she met Hecate, guardian of thresholds, who spoke not comfort but companionship. Together they rose toward the all-seeing light of Helios. From his chariot of fire came the silent decree. The descent, too, is divine. The child was taken by the will of the Father, that light might dwell even in the depths. Then Demeter bowed her radiant head and turned her eyes toward the mortal world. The gods feasted still, but she descended to walk among those who had forgotten heaven, carrying in her heart the first ember of compassion. Now we enter the 8th degree, the multiplicity of form, where divine wisdom, descending further, takes on shape and name among mortals. Demeter arrives at Eleusis, the city of Advent, and what begins outwardly as a story of hospitality is inwardly the birth of sacred embodiment, the soul, the learning to work within form. Section 3, The Arrival at Eleusis. Degree 8, Multiplicity, River. Demeter came to the plain of Eleusis, her light now hidden in the semblance of a mortal woman. By the maiden's well she sat in silence, a stranger weary with divine grief. Around her the daughters of mortals gathered, bearing pitchers and laughter, not knowing who sat beside them. She spoke to them gently. "I am Doso, the giver. I have wandered far from home. Take me to a house where hearts are kind, and I will bless the hearth with unseen fire." So they led her to Metaneira, queen of the house, whose child Demephon slept with the peace of morning light. Demeter took the child to her breast and breathed upon him the breath of immortality. Each night she placed him in the sacred flame, that the mortal shell might turn to gold. But fear broke the rite. The mother's cry shattered the silence of transfiguration, and the goddess withdrew her hand. Then, revealing her glory, she stood crowned in unearthly brightness. The house filled with trembling, the air became perfume. "Ye mortals," she said, "know not what blessings you resist, yet even fear is holy, for it keeps the secret hidden." And she commanded a temple to be built upon that ground of revelation, that those who seek might learn by symbol what no mortal tongue can tell. Now we reach the 7th degree, purification, threshold, the moment when divine fire touches matter and reveals its impermanence. Here the child of mortality, Demephon, symbolizes the human soul itself, and the goddess's hidden rite of fire becomes the mystery of spiritual purification, where the soul's clay is burned into gold. The Homeric Hymn to Demeter, Esoteric Translation and Degree Mapping. Section 4. The Nursing of Demeter, Degree 7, Purification Threshold. Each night, when mortals slept and dreams veiled the world, the goddess rose from her quiet corner. She kindled the hearth with the flame that burns unseen, and took the infant from his mortal cradle. Gently she laid him within the fire, not to destroy but to refine. For the divine knows that death is not the end, but the alchemy by which what is mortal becomes immortal. As gold is purified of dross, so the soul is cleansed of all that is not itself. Demeter slept in the heart of the flame, and the goddess sang low hymns without words, melodies older than speech, drawn from the stillness before creation. Yet the human heart fears its own transfiguration. Metanera awoke, saw the child encircled by fire, and cried aloud, breaking the silence of the mystery. Her fear tore the veil before its time, and the goddess, luminous and terrible, revealed herself. "O foolish race," she said, "ye do not understand the fire. It is love, not wrath, that burns, and none may cross the threshold without its touch. What you call death is the body's forgetting. What I offer is remembrance made pure." Then she stepped forth, and the fire became a torch of initiation. The night air filled with the scent of immortality, and those who saw her knelt without knowing why. Now we cross into the 6th degree, beauty statue, the sacred architecture of awakening. Demeter commands the building of her temple, not merely a house of stone, but the form of the soul itself, where beauty begins to take shape from inner fire. This is the degree of becoming the temple. The Homeric Hymn to Demeter, Esoteric Translation and Degree Mapping. Section V. The Temple at Eleusis, Degree 6, Beauty Statue. When dawn returned, the goddess spoke. "Let a temple be raised upon this ground, for where fire has touched, holiness remains. Build it from the living earth, that the place of loss may become the place of light." The people gathered, moved by a power not their own. Their hands remembered measures older than time. Stone rose upon stone in harmony with unseen proportion, and the air grew thick with fragrance and meaning. When the temple stood complete, Demeter entered and sat in silence. She touched the marble walls, and they glowed as though breathing with her soul. She whispered, "All that is beautiful is a remembering, for beauty is not added to things, it is what shines through them when they are made pure." So she withdrew into the inner chamber, a statue of living light, and the world began to hunger for her presence. The fields grew barren, the seeds would not rise, for the goddess of growth had hidden herself within the image of perfection. The world waits in stillness until beauty chooses to return. Now we reach the 5th degree, virtue ladder, where the world learns discipline through deprivation. Demeter's withdrawal causes famine, a cosmic allegory of the soul that loses contact with the divine. Here virtue appears not as rule or restraint, but as the order by which harmony returns. The famine is the soul's disorder, the law of the gods its restoration. The Homeric Hymn to Demeter, Esoteric Translation and Degree Mapping. Section Sist. The barren earth and the appeal of the gods, virtue ladder. The earth groaned in silence. No seed stirred beneath the soil. The oxen turned the empty furrows in vain. Mortals wasted away, and the smoke of sacrifice no longer rose to heaven. From high Olympus the gods looked down and saw their altars cold. They sent Hermes, swift mind of the divine, to seek the mother who had hidden herself. He found her in her temple, still as a statue, bright as a star concealed by clouds. He spoke, "Great lady, if you withhold your blessing, the order of all things shall fall into shadow. The chain that binds the heavens to the earth will break." But Demeter answered, "Until the lost is found, I shall not return. Let the law of hunger teach what love once gave." So the gods gathered in council, and Zeus decreed, "Virtue is remembrance made manifest. Let each being turn again toward its source." Then they sent Iris, winged flame of reconciliation, bearing the message of measure and mercy. The world began to remember its law. Rivers resumed their courses, winds softened, and even grief began to find its proper place. Thus virtue was reborn as balance, the ladder upon which both gods and mortals ascend. Now we enter the 4th degree, dialectic temple, where understanding becomes the soul's new form of worship. Here Persephone's descent and ascent mirror the dialogue of heaven and earth. Loss and return are joined in one divine conversation. This is the temple of meaning itself, where the soul begins to think in symbols rather than words, and every motion of the cosmos becomes a lesson in reunion. The Homeric hymn to Demeter. Esoteric translation and degree mapping. The descent and return of Persephone, lines 501 to 600. Degree 4, dialectic temple. A trembling passed through the deep places of the earth. Hermes descended, bearing the will of Zeus, his voice clear as a thread of gold. He entered the shadowed halls of Idoneus, where Persephone sat beside the throne of night. King of those below, said the messenger, the measure of heaven demands return. Let her who was taken rise again, that the world may remember the light. Hades smiled, not in malice, but in mystery. He placed in her hand a seed of pomegranate, bright with the fire of becoming, and said, Eat, and you shall know both realms. So Persephone tasted the seed, the fruit of knowledge and division, and in that act she became twofold, queen of the dead, child of the dawn. She rose with Hermes through the hollow dark, and as they neared the surface, the earth began to breathe again. Demeter felt her coming before she saw her. She ran from the temple, and when they met, time itself wept with joy. Then Persephone spoke. Mother, I have learned what cannot be unlearned, that life and death are one dance, and each needs the other to be whole. And Demeter answered, So be it. The temple of heaven and earth shall stand forever open. The descent and ascent shall be one path, and the wise shall walk it in both directions. Thus was founded the mysteries. Now we stand in the third degree, now sun, where intellect awakens as a radiant seeing. No longer divided by opposites, the mind becomes mirror and light together. It perceives the world not as a collection of things, but as the thought of the divine made visible, an eternal pattern unfolding through time. This is the degree of illumination without motion, where contemplation itself sustains creation. The Homeric hymn to Demeter. Esoteric translation and degree mapping. Section 8. The renewal of earth and the law of cycles, lines 601 to 700. Degree sun. When the mother and the daughter were joined again, the sun rose upon a world reborn. Grass broke through the soil like laughter, rivers forgot their sorrow, and every root remembered its purpose. Demeter stretched forth her hand, and where it touched the fields, the golden ears of barley sprang up. But she spoke also of measure. Let the seed fall and rise again, that memory may be woven with renewal. Then Persephone, her eyes like dawn, replied, Half the year I shall dwell above, half below. The living and the dead shall share one song. And so the law of cycles was born. Spring and decay, ascent and descent, joy and grief, woven together in one rhythm. The gods looked upon this harmony and saw their own reflection in its order. The soul of the world had remembered itself, and the sun, golden intellect, stood still for a moment over Eleusis, as if beholding its own idea made manifest, light knowing light. Now we arrive at the second degree, intelligible beauty, jewel, where light ceases to travel and becomes its own reflection. This is the degree of radiant stillness. The mind no longer reaches toward the divine. It is divine perception. Beauty is not something seen, but the state of being seen by the one. Here the hymn to Demeter turns silent. Its symbols become transparent. The earth and the sky now gaze upon each other in mutual knowing. The Homeric hymn to Demeter, esoteric translation and degree mapping. Section 9. The hidden fire, what remains unspoken. Degree 2. Intelligible beauty. At Eleusis, the torches were set down. The night did not end, but became luminous, darkness unfolding into its own brightness. Those who stood within the sacred hall saw nothing, and yet all things. The sound of the ocean was within their ears, and within that sound, the pulse of the divine heart. Then Demeter spoke no word, for her silence was more eloquent than light. Persephone lifted her hand, and in that gesture the mystery was complete. To lose and to find are one movement, to descend and to rise are the same flame. The initiates saw this and wept quietly. Their tears were not sorrow but recognition, for they knew they had seen themselves in the eyes of the gods. And so the hymn ends not in praise but in transparency, the world seen as a jewel held in eternity's hand. Now we reach the summit, the first degree, the one white fire. All ascent ceases, all return dissolves. There is no longer seeker or seen, no light or shadow, only being beyond being. This is the heart of the mysteries, where language fails and silence becomes truth. What Plotinus called henosis, union, the poets called white fire, the radiance that contains both darkness and light, the moment when the cosmos beholds itself and smiles. The Homeric hymn to Demeter. Esoteric translation and degree mapping. Section text. The one white fire, beyond the text. Degree 1, the one white fire. Before the gods, before the earth and sea, before thought itself began, there was this. A brilliance too full to shine, a silence too deep to echo. From it came all names and forms, yet it remains unnamed, unformed. When Demeter and Persephone embraced, their light passed through each other, mother within daughter, daughter within mother, until neither could be told apart. That moment was not time. It was the world remembering its own beginning, and so every spring is the memory of that instant, and every seed a hymn to the unseen source. We do not ascend to it. We remember that we never left. Coda. The circle of light. The circle is whole. The one beholds itself through all that has been. What was descent was love. What is return is remembrance.